know that magic number called your credit score? I bet you know what yours is. And that's by design, because financial institutions have trained us for years that one little number unlocks every single product and service that you have access to in your financial life. Now that number is supposed to be equitable. It's supposed to level the playing field. But what if it actually reinforces systemic inequalities? I've invited Alejandra Denda, the first ever CMO of the Federal Savings Bank, to help us unpack this myth. I'm Laura Jones, and this is Opinion Party, the podcast where we explore the most pervasive myths in modern marketing. Welcome to Opinion Party, Alejandra.
Nice meeting you. I'm really happy to be here.
So I want to start by calling out your superpower. You speak 5 languages?
Wow. I used to be fluent in 5 languages, and I'm still kind of like pretty strong at them. But after living 20-something years in the US and the last 10 being in US roles, I think I'm more rusty in some of them. But I study kind of 5 different languages and I understand completely. And I think that gives me a different perspective about life.
How so?
I think people who speak different languages see the world differently. And it gives you a cultural context in terms of understanding how people think, how people act. So you see kind of more than words, you hear what people's backgrounds are and how they impact their decisions. So I think that kind of makes me understand cultures in a different way.
So let's get personal and talk about money. It's such a hard topic in so many cultures. And here we are, 2 women. I just want to get right into it. How have your early experiences with money shaped your experience now as a chief marketing officer of a financial services institution?
Wow, that's a great question and a very loaded question. So I'm originally Argentinian, and in 2001 was a big economic crisis in Argentina. I was already living in the US by that time, but I actually was affected by it. So I don't know how much kind of like your audience knows, but 2001, almost the Argentine economy collapsed. So they froze all bank accounts and they restrict your access to cash. And the dollar was pegged to the peso was kind of like basically unpegged. So they kind of, the currency devaluated in a great degree. So that created social unrest, people going to the streets and really complaining about it because they lost 50 to 7% of their savings. And there was this massive impact on the economy, like increased levels of poverty and employment. So it was really something that shook the country. And even though I was living in the US, I still had savings and have money in Argentina. So that kind of huge event that really impacted the Argentinian society made me realize kind of the importance of the relation with money and the relations with institutions. So when we are looking right now at the failed savings bank and what's kind of our relationship with like consumers, we understand that consumers come from different parts of the world with different understanding of money and different trust in financial institutions. So that specific event and that relationship made me be more conservative and more aware of different societies and different cultures and their relationship with money.
So interesting. And I can see from the initiatives that you've worked on that you've really brought that human insight and that truth into everything you've done. And speaking of, you're the Federal Savings Bank's first CMO. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So when you come in, tell me about that. Were there legacy systems in place, legacy perhaps myths of your own in place that you needed to break through to really start to have impact?
Yes. I don't know how much you know about financial institutions, but it's a very male-dominated environment, the industry overall. It's very product-focused. This is a product we have and we are pushing to the market. And doesn't understand exactly what's kind of like, doesn't have the understanding of consumer insights, understanding of the impact in society. So I had to first learn the industry and then do a very deep dive in consumer segments, consumer understanding, and things that I leverage from the CPG world, like category growth drivers, what's kind of like really driving industry growth, and at the same time, to your point, with that kind of human level, what kind of drives kind of like people's growth and kind of wealth growth. So it was really interesting to bring a completely different perspective to the financial industry and more the traditional CPG training in order to understand how we can unlock insights and help company grow, but at the same time help people be better in like their financial understanding and what to do, what's best for them on a family or individual basis.
So let's get right into the heart of this myth, right? That the color of money is green, that there's just this objective one-size-fits-all approach. It's very standardized, and financial institutions pride themselves on that fact, on being able to make very rational, logical decisions. But the data shows that these situations can oftentimes disadvantage certain people from certain communities. Why do you think that this myth hangs around so much?
I think that there's definitely socioeconomic disparities across the world and in the US. And I think that that's a reflection of those disparities. So I believe that different institutions try to address it in different ways. At the Federal Savings Bank, we pride ourselves to give kind of loans to all and help the homeownership process to all. So we have specific initiatives like education initiatives to help really people from, we started actually helping people from other countries and immigrants to understand the mortgage process. Mortgage is a process that almost only happens in the UK and the US in the same way that we have the American process. It's very Anglo-Saxon. There's other countries in the world that they have kind of like mortgage system that is quite different than the one in the US. So with so many immigrants in the US, people kind of come from different perspectives. So we started saying we need to educate people of what's the process and how you build credit. And that is actually a pretty counterintuitive process. When you talk to other populations and say, you build credit by spending, it's kind of crazy, really? In order to get a loan, I need to spend in credit cards, so I need to assume debt in order to get more debt. It doesn't make kind of rational sense. So we need to explain that process to different socioeconomic, to different groups. But then we realized in that process that many Americans don't know that either. So we started the process thinking, as an immigrant and as somebody have kind of worked with cultures around the world, we started saying we need to give this education and this almost level the playing field for immigrants. But then talking with different Americans, we realized that also there's a lack of understanding of the process, and it's a complex process overall. So we started first with education, understanding why it makes sense to do things, why you shouldn't buy a car before you're buying a loan because your credit score is going to be affected, how you build credit, you build kind of like, and while understanding what's the best financial decision for you. And then we started thinking about products, specific products. So we have one product called ITIN loans that are for people who doesn't have social security number. So those people with other bankers, with other banks, get really unfair treatment. There's a lot of predatory practices with that kind of consumer groups. They don't have social. They think many banks kind of charge them incremental fees to get like a credit score or to do a pre-approval. That doesn't happen with like mainstream Americans.
So what assumptions do you think that traditional banks are missing that you at the Federal Savings Bank can see and take advantage of for market opportunity?
I think that there's assumptions like thinking that immigrants have kind of like carry more risk because they may have like less stable jobs. But actually, we realize that with our IT product, for example, we have really low level of delinquencies. So there's kind of like, based on education and clear communication and transparency, we're able to mitigate some of the risk that banks think are attached to different immigrant groups or different groups across the board. So we have the program for ITIN. We are veteran owned and operated, so we have specific products for military and veterans that really help that group get access to benefits that the government, the state government offers, and many other bankers don't kind of offer because it's more time consuming. It's a little bit kind of harder from an operations perspective. So we do help with like government loans that give give home ownership opportunities to people who doesn't have a down payment or doesn't have social or kind of are veterans and military. So we offered all those kind of products to help people have access to home ownership. And we know there's a direct correlation between home ownership and wealth creation.
It sounds like you do a lot of product development, which is very impressive for a financial institution. Is there a particular approach in place that you use to product development that kind of keeps that stream going?
I think it all starts with the consumer and understanding consumer needs and understanding how we can have a positive impact. And I think part of the legacy that we talked before, you asked me about like what's kind of like legacy practices, is the financial institution is always kind of like product first. So I offer you a secure loan or an unsecured loan. And people say like, I need money. I have no idea if it's secure and secure. There's all this kind of lingo and terminology in the financial industry that is really difficult to grasp. So we started with like understanding consumer needs first and understanding how to deliver the right product for that consumer. And many times is, I need like a loan for a wedding, or I need a loan to do kind of like a home renovation in my house. So all those are like products that from a financial perspective might be similar, but from a consumer perspective are completely different. So really understanding the consumer need and offering a clear solution to their needs. That's what we're all about.
And we're both part of IRG, the Institute for Real Growth. That's the organization that's bringing us together. Tell us a little bit about your IRG journey and how you took your Ikigai and brought it into the work that you do.
Well, you're speaking to my heart right now. I love the concept of Ikigai and the concept of really balancing of what's kind of your purpose, what you're gonna impact in the workplace that's impacting your life. So from a personal Ikigai, besides being the CMO of the Federal Savings Bank, I'm also a Northwestern professor. I teach both the master's as well as the undergrad in marketing. And that's an area that I want to have impact for future generations. And I do a lot of mentorship. So my Ikigai is about having impact across everything that I touch. And part of the impact with the Federal Savings Bank has been really understanding the model of the ARG, of like how you deliver against key stakeholders like customers, the colleagues, community, and capital markets, and how do that with the SDGs in mind. So, as you mentioned in the beginning, the capital markets is an easy kind of correlation for like financial institutions. Our product is money, so we buy and sell money in a way. So, how we will deliver against the other stakeholders, and as I mentioned, kind of like what has helped me have a completely different perspective in this role. It's my traditional training in consumer packaged goods and how to understand kind of consumer needs and how to drive from data to insight, and how we make sure that that kind of brings impact in the consumer and in the communities that they live in. So part of that IRG process was making sure we keep the consumer front and center of everything that we do. That is very unique for financial institutions that normally has product first. Understanding the impact of that in the communities, and home ownership is one of the biggest drivers for like community growth. So the IRG really helped kind of understand that framework and understand how with colleagues we can work more collaborative. Because as you said, financial institutions is all about ROI and metrics. So how we can make sure people understand that marketing drives growth and is one of the more important growth engines. So how marketing can have a seat on the table that in traditional banks is kind of hard to do. In traditional banks, marketing tends to be more a cost center and a sales enablement tool. But based on my personal perspective, is completely aligned with ARG. I think that is kind of one of the, you have this sense of the industry, sense of the consumer, and can help both boost growth within the company. So using kind of that framework, as well as understanding the societal impact, so the SDGs, whether it's no poverty, whether it's like health and wellness, there's a strong correlation with financial security and psychological security. So by owning a home, you feel more stable, and that helps with mental health and helps with psychological safety. So how you build, would you take care to really leverage all those things together and bring strategies and bring kind of tactics from a marketing perspective that deliver against that.
Your students at Northwestern are so lucky to have your perspective and such a leader with heart and skill. Is there anything surprising that you teach your students that you maybe wouldn't expect them to hear in a traditional business school setting?
Yeah, I think it's your first question was about like being multilingual, and I told you about like cultural context. And one of the things that I teach is this framework called Hoofdtes dimensions, cultural dimensions, and this is a Dutch psychologist and sociologist who create this framework to analyze different countries and how people behave in those countries. So you have countries that are more individualistic versus more like collectivist, and there's countries that are more pro-indulgence than others. So that framework helps understand the communities that you serve. And there's no right or wrong. It's just kind of like different countries on different, or at a community level, tend to over-index in some of the characteristics versus others. And I think that framework really helps people understand better the impact on the communities, no matter what they are. So I started teaching international marketing strategy, and I use that framework to understand how when you launch products to new markets, you understand the cultural kind of environment. But even in the class that I teach right now, that is branding in the digital age, and how you leverage traditional marketing and branding concepts into this environment with AI, with VIR, and new technologies, I still use that framework that is very traditional, but helps you understand consumer and societies. And I think that the fundamentals are still really important, no matter how you leverage technologies on top of that.
I completely agree. The more things rapidly evolve, the more we need to keep our humanness at the center of it. Well, we're nearing the end of our time together. Is there any last insight that you'd like to give your fellow marketing community about what you've learned here at IRG, or any advice as to how to navigate this time?
I think part of the IRG model and part of my personal motto is authenticity, and it's leading from the heart. So understand the human aspect of everything that we do from a consumer as well as a leader with your team, and be authentic and lead from the heart. And I think that many people try to go what's kind of like, what's the newest, what's the new things that are like trending. But I think that it's really important to be consistent with the fundamentals of understanding consumer behavior, understanding the frameworks that are traditional of marketing, and utilize them to understand different industries. So many people tell me it's interesting kind of the transition between like CPG and financial institutions and the financial industry. And I think actually the fundamentals are the same. And the way to really kind of like drive impact is understanding consumer needs and your impact in society and delivering messages and strategies that deliver against that. And from a leadership perspective, I really believe in authenticity and having the right conversation and having kind of that across different stakeholders. And I think that that kind of has really have positive impact in both kind of like my career life, as well as my life as a professor, as well as my personal life. So be true to yourself, be authentic, and really think about the impact, your Ikigai, and the impact that you want to make in the communities.
Well said, Alejandra. Having conversations like this one are the bedrock of so many unlocks. Thank you so much for joining us on Opinion Party. It was really great to have you and to be here with you at IRG. If you want to find out more about anything you've heard in this episode, check out the show notes. And remember, everyone's invited to Opinion Party, so please hit like or subscribe. Thanks for coming.